What's up guys, it's Eric from Rare Candy and welcome back to another Crimson Invasion deck profile. This time we are going to be taking a look at Gourgeist, kind of a little bit of a pet deck I've been working on in my spare time. But this is the same list that we actually featured in our recent testing grounds videos, so if you want to see this deck in action, I'll be sure to have a link in the description for you guys to check that out. So if you're unfamiliar with the testing rounds videos that we do, they normally feature kind of rough, unrefined lists as our starting points to start testing with. So there might be some things in here we could tweak or improve. So just a heads up as you're watching this video. But yeah, Gourgeist, it is a new card from Crimson Invasion, kind of under the radar a little bit. Not a whole lot of people have been talking about it, so let's see what it's all about. So this is a Gourgeist deck, so we are playing 4 Pumpkaboo. I believe this is the only one that we have available to us. So we're just using the newest one from Crimson Invasion, not too relevant. We don't even play Psychic Energy in the deck, so we can't even use its attack. So we're basically just playing it just to evolve into Gourgeist. And the reason we are kind of excited about Gourgeist is for its attack, Pumpkin Bomb. And so before doing damage, you may discard any tool cards that are attached to any of your Pokemon in play. And it does 10 plus 40 more for every tool that you discard. So that's kind of the main way we're going to be doing damage with this deck. So if you discard, for example, 5 tool cards, you can hit for 210, which knocks out a lot of things in the format. Similarly, if you have a tool in all of your Pokemon and discard 6, you're going to be knocking out even things like Zoroark GX and some of the big 250 hit point Pokemon in the format. So that's what the deck is going to kind of be based around, but one thing we did mention in our set review is that Gourgeist definitely needs a partner. Sometimes it can be tough to close out a game with Pumpkin Bomb just because you're having to use so many resources in order to take your knockouts, especially against one prize attacking decks. So let's see what else we have in here. We have 3 Zoroark and 2 Zoroark GX. This is going to be the main partner for Gourgeist. So we're playing Zoroark GX for a few reasons. It has that Riotous Beating attack just for a double colorless energy. Since we already play that for Gourgeist, we can use this as a backup attacker. 20 for each Pokemon that we have in play. So just a solid little 2-shotting attack for 120. It doesn't require us to discard any resources to get out. So it's just a solid little backup attack. But it also has the ability to trade once during your turn before you attack. You may discard a card from your hand and draw 2 cards. So we are constantly discarding tools every turn and always needing more and more resources. So Zoroark GX is going to help in that regard, just to keep us in the game, especially in the late game. If we discard all of our tool cards and our opponent ends us to maybe like 1 or 2 cards, we need to make sure that we can draw out of that. And so Zoroark GX really comes in handy there. But we're still also playing one of the old Zoroark as well, partially for that stand-in ability once during your turn before you attack. If he is on your bench, you may make it your active Pokemon. So let's just get right into the active spot. We run a ton of float stones in here as well, so we can basically have free retreat on everything that we want. But Mind Jack is also still a solid attack. It does 10 plus 30 more for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So, if they have 5 on their bench, you're doing 160. With the Choice Band, that's 190. So just another really, really solid backup attacker that doesn't really require a bunch of resources like Gourgeist. But yes, that's why we are playing these guys. And it is worth noting we are playing the new Zoruas from Shining Legends. We're not playing the old ones from Breakthrough, just because they actually can't attack for colorless energy, whereas this one can use Ram for a double colorless to do 20 damage. Not the greatest attack, but again, it's just to give us every little out that we can possibly have. Sometimes the 20 damage might make the difference between a knockout and not getting a knockout. So that's going to be kind of the core of the deck, but the other, I guess, cool part is we are playing 4 Klefki. And I can't even take credit for this. My buddy Xander Bennett from the Meta podcast, definitely go check them out. He's actually the one who recommended this to me. He's been also working on Gourgeist. So as soon as he told me about this, I knew I had to immediately switch over and play this. So we're playing Klefki because it has the Wonderlock ability. Once during your turn, before you attack, you may discard all cards attached to Klefki and attach it as a tool card to one of your Pokemon. So that means Klefki can be discarded with Pumpkin Bomb. So that is the whole reason we are playing it. And you might be thinking, well, why not just play more tool cards? Why do you want to play Klefki instead? Well, we'll get to that more later, but the main reason is going to be Rescue Stretcher and all of the different search options that you have for Pokemon as opposed to item cards. So Klefki, just such a clutch card. Like I said, giving Xander a lot of credit for that. But anyway, so next up we have one Mr. Mime. This is kind of a flexible spot in the deck, I think, but the reason I'm playing Mr. Mime is for the bench barrier ability, so it prevents damage done to your bench Pokemon by your opponent's attacks. So that's good because we have a lot of low HP, evolving basics. So if we're playing against something like, Tapu Koko, Alolan Ninetales, or even the new Buzzwole, which we can hit for weakness, but nevertheless, if we're playing against some of these decks that can set up knockouts, like big de-evolution plays with Espeon EX, Mr. Mime can kind of, help us deal with those types of decks. But this is kind of a flexible spot. We'll have to see how the Crimson Invasion metagame, ends up shaping up. So you might be able to cut that for something else, but it seems like good insurance against Buzzwole and all the other spread type of strategies that are currently in the format. And the last Pokemon is 2 copies of Tapu Lele GX, of course for the Wonder Tag ability to get a supporter out of our deck, but also we are playing double Carlos energy, so we can abuse Energy Drive. Again, just a nice little backup attacker that doesn't require a lot of resources to get going, unlike our Gourgeist. And one reason you might be thinking, well, most decks in Standard play around 3 Lele, why are you only playing 2? And that's really just because bench space is very precious in this deck. Ideally, you want to have 2 Gourgeist, 2 Zoruas. You'll probably have a Lele at one point from using Bridget or something like that. So you need at least 1 space open for you to be able to use Klefkis. So I really just didn't feel like we needed, more Leles than what we have. We also have Zoroark GX to draw additional cards. So I think the 2 is going to be fine here. So next up for our training cards, we're playing 4 copies of Professor Sycamore. Discard or hand draw 7. And 3 copies of N. So this is actually a card I had at 4 copies initially, but I ended up cutting it down for a couple reasons. We are a super aggressive deck. It's actually, not uncommon if your opponent starts with like a Lele or something, you can take a knockout as early as your 2nd turn. With Gourgeist, it's a very, very fast deck to get set up. So, and not as strong in this deck as others, but the main reason I cut it is actually for a copy of Mallow. So search your deck for 2 cards, put them on top of your deck, and, shuffle, then put those 2 cards on top of your deck. So we're playing Zoroark GX, and Mallow just seems like a really nice partner for it. A lot of times with this deck, you only are like a tool card short or like a DCE short of taking a knockout, and Mallow just helps you get exactly what you need. Definitely has been a pretty good card so far in the games that I've played with this. Next up, we're playing 3 copies of Guzma, of course, just to choose what we want to take knockouts on. And then also the last 2 supports is going to be 2 copies of Bridget. So I have to admit, I'm one of those people, I don't like playing 2 Bridget in most decks, even, like stuff like Gardevoir, a lot of people opt to play 2. Even then, I'm like, find myself reluctant to do that. But this is actually a deck I really enjoy 2 Bridget in. So, of course, not only does it increase your odds of not prizing Bridget and starting with it in your opening hand, but also Bridget is great because we can actually search out Klefki in the late game, or even the mid game, whatever. So we have a Bridget we can use to get set up initially, and then we have another one to search out some tools to fuel our Gourgeist. So 2 Bridget is just super clutch in this particular deck, I think. So next up we have 4 copies of Ultra Ball, of course, to search out any Pokemon from our deck, but then we're also playing 2 copies of Nest Ball. So this is another kind of interesting inclusion, just because we can search out Klefkis. This is initially a card I was not playing, but since we are playing the Klefkis, it just acts as a way to search out tools out of your deck, which is very, very nice. But then, of course, also it just helps you get set up normally. For some reason, if you prize both Bridgets, you still have some outs to drawing into additional Pokemon with Nest Ball as well. So search your deck for a basic, put it on your bench. Pretty straightforward. So next up, we have 4 copies of Choice Band. So we are going to need tools to discard with our Gourgeist. But even if we're not discarding our tools and we're attacking with other Pokemon, we can still get benefit out of Choice Band, on our Tapu Leles, on our Zoroarks. So it's still a good card, even if we aren't discarding it. Next up, 4 Float Stones, since again we need tools to discard, so this is another great one to max out since we can retreat for free. Definitely has synergy with the Baby Zoroark. Basically gives us free retreat on all of our Pokemon essentially. Then next up, we are playing 3 copies of Rescue Stretcher. So this is another card I was initially running lower counts of, but because of Klefki, it becomes a much more valuable card. So in standard format, we actually don't have access to Eco Arm that we used to have from Ancient Origins that let you get tool cards from your discard back into your deck, but we do have Rescue Stretcher. So of course we're playing 1 or 2 Rescue Stretchers anyways, just because we can get back crucial pieces of our evolution lines and stuff like that. But Rescue Stretcher is also great because it will kind of act as an Eco Arm in a way to grab Klefkis and put them back into the deck. So that's why we are running kind of an inflated count, so we can grab a Klefki right out of our discard and attach it to our field, or get 3 and put them back into our deck. So Rescue Stretcher, even a card I might even consider going up to 4 of potentially, because you are constantly using this card if you are attacking with Gourgeist. And next up, we are playing 3 copies of Field Blower just to discard our opponent's tool cards and stadiums. In particular, there's a few stadiums that can really cause some problems for this deck. Potown is going to be a big one. That combined with Espeon GX and spread strategies to de-evolve us is going to be a problem, since our attackers are 60 hit point basics. So if our opponent gets a Potown to stick and gets off like a Flying Flip or like a Divide GX or something like that, they could potentially just de-evolve all of our Pokemon. So I thought it was very important to be able to Field Blower away our opponent's Potowns against Drampagarb. Also, Parallel City is another very, very painful stadium to deal with, because you need all of your bench space in this deck. So 2 most popular decks in the format at the time of filming run stadiums that really cripple this deck, so definitely want to have plenty of answers to deal with that. Also, against Garbodor variants in general, it's very, very important to be able to take away those float stones. That way you can always have use of your abilities, because if your opponent has a tool card on their Garbotoxin Garbodor, you can't actually make use of Wonderlock. So we needed kind of a higher count of Field Blower to ensure that we have outs against these situations. And the last trainer card we were playing is 2 copies of Special Charge. So the deck is kind of built similarly to like Vespiquen of the past, where you just play some DCEs, and that's pretty much it. So we need ways to get those energies back, especially if we are trying to just attack with Gourgeists, or mainly our Gourgeist. We're going to have to go through a lot of DCEs since they have kind of low HP. So that's why we're playing the 2 Special Charge. You could debatably cut 1 maybe for another card, but definitely without question I would play at least 1 in this deck. And then just to round out the list though, of course we have 4 double colorless energy just to power up all of our attackers that we have. But yeah guys, that's going to be the list we are going to try out. I have to say, this deck is a ton of fun. I definitely encourage you to try it out if nothing else. But yeah guys, what do you think about this? Let me know below in the comments. Do you like this deck? Do you not like it? Is there anything you would change? And like I said, just a big shout out to Xander Bennett from the Metapod cast for tipping me off to Klefki as an addition to this deck. Really made a big difference. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Definitely stay tuned. We're going to have plenty more Crimson Invasion coverage coming. But as usual, feel free to like and subscribe. And don't forget to support us over on patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or pick up something from our online store at rarecandytcg.com. It would be greatly appreciated. But with that, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you for the next one.